Hello, welcome to another one of our building muscle videos, and today we're looking at the quadriceps. And like I've done with the previous videos, I must stress this is not the only way or the only exercises, and there's definitely exercises out there that will build a lot of strength, but the purpose of these videos is how you might be trying to build the strength in a functional capacity, meaning like we're trying to build strength in order to make you move more efficiently, not just to look better. All right, so as with the previous videos, this one we always start with looking at a mobility that affects you building or inhibits you from building strength into the quadriceps. And one of the worst joints one of the main joints for preventing you from building strength into the quads is the ankle. Pretty closely related to what goes on at the foot. So if there's this is maybe I could probably include foot stability pretty much in all of the leg strength videos. I could include foot stability as a factor, but if we just simplify it down to ankle mobility and really trying to get this good dorsiflexion. All right, so you can see how I'm using the band right around the base of the ankle, and I've shown this exercise many times because it's very effective for helping stiff and immobile ankles. But the big question is, why does this help with the quads? Well, you can see here, this point here is really what I'm aiming for at the bottom of a squat, and see how far my knee needs to travel forward in order for me to get the quadriceps to take a lot of the workload. Because if I just play that for you a second, and you see if I can only get that much range because my ankle is so stiff, I'm really going to be in a squat, I'm more likely going to look like that, which is really a deadlift, which is great if it's a deadlift because it's going to load up the posterior chain, but it means I can't get any workload into my quads, so they become weaker, they usually become stiffer if your squat is like that. So it's always important to address any mobility restrictions at the ankle before you try to attempt any strengthening, and often I might use this between sets of squats and knee-loaded movements of one-leg squats, even lunges, especially jumping activities. Obviously, I need to address any hip restrictions as well. So, looking at foam rolling, so more likely quadriceps again, probably inhibiting, resisting you from getting full flexion, which I'll show you a stretch for in a second. Usually tight glutes are actually going to enhance quadricep function because it usually means that you suck at bending, so you don't have good hip loaded movements. But I might use the foam roller to roll instead of through the glutes. I might more roll around the side of the hip and definitely through the quadriceps, especially around near the knee where I might be lacking in knee flexion. So I need to have full knee flexion in order to get the exposure to the quadricep muscles to do their workload, especially where they're most vulnerable, which is when they're at that point. So trigger points can easily develop, and you may not be able to get rid of them through a stretch. That's where you might need to use the foam rolling in this case. And once I've done that, I might use this stretcher I'm about to show you. This is really a sort of a good test in a way, so I can use this as an assessment tool to determine if I do have adequate flexion or not. And if I don't, I know I need to work on it. If I do, I can rule it out, and I might just keep an eye on it. But I know that I can safely get, or I should be able to get in good control of both the squat and with the ankle and the knee if I have adequate flexibility and mobility at those two joints. All right, so that's where I start at before I try and attempt any type of strengthening, just to make sure that it gives my body's got every chance of getting in the right position to do so. Once I've done that, I really want to start looking at basic stability requirements. And obviously when we're talking about quadriceps, we're really going to be talking a lot about knee-loaded movements. So the knee's really going to be exposed to sideways forces. All right, so what I mean by that is especially when I'm standing on single leg, any time the knee sort of caves in usually, but it can also bow out to the side as well. And that's nothing to do with the knee, it's everything to do with the ankle and the hip. Those two joints are the ones that are rotating inwards or falling out or or all these different things that can go wrong, and then it puts the knee in these horrible positions where we usually see injuries occur, so where you see that sort of stuff, as opposed to where I've got it right now. So I'll use some basic stability drills just to enhance the function, and not really working too deep of range, just a small range. I don't really want to get too much hip because I'm trying to get my knee more involved. This is the basic toe touch drill where I'm working in multi-directional capacity, so I'm going backwards, then diagonally, then laterally, sideways, and then in the forward ones are the two main ones that are quadricep loaded, because I can't sit my hip back too far because I'm reaching out in front of me. All right, so these two at the end here are really good sort of tests to see if there's anything gonna buckle on me as such, and you'll see from a side-on angle of what it looks like when I'm doing this. So the back one is where I get the most hip involved, all right, and same with the next one as well. The ones where I'm moving, where I'm starting to get more forward, you'll see that I can't use my hips so much. I am quite upright on these, and you'll see how I'm almost in that similar thing that you'll see in the squats. All right, so I'm really trying to load the knee, but making sure that it doesn't cave in and buckle on me. And now you really see me sitting quite upright, which reduces my range of motion because my ankle just runs out of range, and because I can't use my hip anymore. All right, so it's a very simple stability drill, very, very effective at predicting future problems. Now, once I've gone past that, obviously I want to move into my squat. So I'm sort of showing you from a side-on angle here, get a bit of a perspective of what I'm looking for. And, again, with everything, I'm just looking for, is there going to be that ankle mobility that I had at the start? Is it still there now? Because if it's disappeared, there must be something else that I've missed. Usually a weakness is being hidden somewhere. But really, I'm trying to gain deep enough range, but keeping these angles of the spine and the shins quite parallel. And this is where I'm making sure that I'm getting adequate workload through the quadriceps, and not just loading up the lower back and the posterior chain. So obviously I could add a dumbbell or a kettlebell, make it a loaded squat. I could hold the squat if I wanted to do tempo changes the load. I could add a barbell on the back and do a back squat if I wanted to, if I'm looking good there. If I'm not quite sure I've got a good enough range, I can move to these things where I could add heel plates, and then even more so these decline squat ramps. They're very, very effective, especially with people who are really struggling to sit upright and get a good range. The angle in this really significantly improves like it takes out the ankle. So if the ankle's a problem, basically removes the ankle, and now that person can really sit deep into a squat quite easily and be sitting really upright. This type of squat is very effective post injury from ACL tears or any really knee injury for that matter, where there's significant weakness, and you can really work through good range. So you can see how much flexion I'm getting at the knee here, but it's different to the stretch because I need a hell of a lot of strength and stability, but I've removed probably the biggest player that's inhibiting me from getting there. So this can be a very, very effective tool in rebuilding that strength and getting in the deep range of the squat. So where everything's, especially the quads themselves, are under full stretch but under full load at the same time. So a very, very a great tool for that person to feel the squat in that sitting upright position, and build some significant strength. Again, I could add dumbbell, barbell if I wanted to as well, and really take it up a notch. All right, so that's a great way that you can play with it. If you don't have a ramp, like I said, you could use some heel plates. They're not quite as high, but you can just experiment and see what works for you. Once I've sort of moved from there, then I want to maybe look at some adding the extra element of what we looked at before with the stability exercise, but bringing in the lunge movement. I'm just fast forward this for you. So I want to increase that band height around the knee. Or firstly, I'll start off with the squat. So I'm coming back to the floor. I want to make sure that I don't have any knee buckling inwards. So I'm really bringing in glute strength within the squat. So I'm still got my quads on the go, but I'm making sure my glutes don't fail on me in the squat. And then, like I said a minute ago, I can also test it in the lunge. Lunge is quite unique because I'm very upright. I mean, you know, I'm really quite upright, and works best when you're on the move, the lunge. But obviously before you get on the move, you want to make sure you've got the static one correct. So I'm just making sure that my glutes are on the job, so my quads and my knee are all going to be able to perform their role. Again, I could add dumbbells to the, probably not a barbell, and that's a bit too awkward, but I definitely could add some dumbbells to it to enhance it. Once I've got the squat, the lunge right, I can also look at doing the single leg squats. You know, and I can probably start off with, like, instead of going straight, I was going to do a band version there, but maybe looking at, I was going to do the front squat before. I'm trying to remember how I did this video, but if I'm going straight from the simple stuff, because the order, it just depends on the person how I change it, what's the next progression. So to show you an example of the front squat with the barbell, and you can see, like, with doing it in a clean grip like this, I've got a really sore finger on this, so I can't really hold the bar properly. I'm struggling here. But anyway, so with the front squat, it's a lot different to a back squat where the barbell's on your back, in that it really forces your thoracic rib cage to hold yourself upright. You can see I'm really losing my form. My fingers are really giving me a lot of trouble to see. My elbows are pointing down. I really need to be having them vertically straight ahead, and I probably would allow me to sit up that little bit straighter again. I'm not too bad with my squat, just losing the form on the clean grip there because I didn't really want to do it. But that's the angle I'm looking for, all right? And you just try to maintain that upright posture. That upright posture is what blows the quads right up anytime you're sitting upright like that. That's why the front squat works a little bit harder. It's a much more complicated squat than the back squat. All right, they're both good versions to use, just the front squat a lot more effective for loading the quads. All right, so I can really go from those sort of simple stability type movements into these really heavy loaded ones. And this is where you're really going to build a significant amount of strength into the quadriceps, if that's your goal. Obviously, you're building strength into the hamstrings and glutes because they're all partners in this. Just the angles of the body is what probably exacerbates certain muscle groups more than others, where, like we saw in the earlier one with the hamstrings, the bend over position sort of minimises the amount of glutes involved and maximises the glutes and hamstrings. And this is the exact opposite. So this is where I was going to do the single leg before the front squat, but I really believe this is a much more difficult exercise, just as so much more complexity involved. So all those stability requirements are now a bigger factor in this than they were in the front squat we just looked at. As opposed to the toe touch drill before, where very similar, this time actually I'm going quite deep in the range, where before I wasn't getting deep, now I am. And I'm still having to maintain that nice alignment, but now I'm sitting quite upright. Very, very difficult exercise for most people. They really struggle with the strength required. By the way, I prefer this type of single leg squat than a pistol. The pistol squat is when this leg here is usually sitting out the front. Most people will round their back out when they do that, and they'll sort of be like, you know, hunched over position, and that hunched over position just ruins your back. So there's nothing good to be gained from that. It's much better to do it this way. This mimics the running action and the braking action that you would see, which we will show you at the end with the agility stuff. But again, you can see the same angles I'm looking for as before. You can see this is a lot harder, even though it's body weight. It's actually a much harder exercise. I can cheat on this if I wanted to, because stability can get in the way of building strength here. And if that's your goal, if you know you have good stability and you're okay to cheat on it, that's okay, as long as you still work on your stability at the same time. So how I cheat on it, I just basically remove the stability as a factor, and now I'll be able to sink into a little bit deeper range. So I can just use a band like this, or even just hold on to the pole. Now I can really sink quite low, and I can still sit upright and get through that sticking point where I was stuck. All right. So this is a clever way to really build the strength into quite a complicated movement. Like I said before, you don't want to just do this though and get strength at the expense of stability. Sometimes it's better to work with smaller range and work through that stability deficit, and that's more advantageous to you than the strength itself. All right, so but using a combination of the two, again, it depends on the person and where you're at with everything as to what's going to be best for you. All right, so once you're moving through your complicated stuff of like stability with combined with strength, your last sort of thing you want to be looking at is obviously the explosive and the things where you don't have time to think about it, and they're always jumping. They're always your power movements. Now you're trying to land in your perfect squat, like in midair. You've got to like just execute that perfect form, and that's where all your training of before is all being executed. It should look exactly like the one you were just doing on the floor. You shouldn't see any dropping back with your hips too far and collapsing at your hips. You also might see falling out to left or right if your weakness, is exposed in these jumping movements. But if you play sports, these are crucial to get to. All right, so they're all functional ways of building strength into the quads. All right, so there's a couple others that I'll show you. Again, the order is not in precise order. You can mix and match it however works best for you. Okay, so these last few exercises, again, there's really hundreds of these that I could add. These aren't the only ones. They're just some of the ones that I prefer, or they are known quadricep loaded movements. So this first one's just a simple using a BOSU. Basically, it's like the hopping drill I just showed you, but the instability just makes that little bit tougher. And again, you're trying to sit quite upright in the landing. The BOSU in some ways helps you to do that because it's quite a soft landing, and you can cushion yourself as if you're going to push backwards. And it's that pushing backwards that brings in the quads. It's very much like when you're running downhill. You'll feel your quads blow up big time if you're running steeply downhill. Now this next one is like it's just a squat and just jumping little quarter turn jumps on this BOSU. Looks quite simple. It's surprisingly very, very hard on your quads, and the reason is that if your body goes to fall forward at any point and it tries to straighten itself up so you don't collapse, you can see there I nearly fell forward. That nearly where my body's about to go over, so I'm going to be going that way. My quadriceps huge contraction just like bring me up and then help me sit upright. It tries to counter this feeling. This is a very deceptive exercise, and it's the length of time that'll make you blow up. So usually I'll try to do 10 quarter turns in a row. This last one is just basically a stepping back lunge. And like I said earlier with the lunge, on the move it's much harder because that pushing back, just like I said a minute ago with the running downhill, that stepping back is what really blows them up. But this is also where they're really going to be worked at their most. So I could add dumbbells to this, or I could add a barbell, and would significantly make it harder. It's easy to step out because when I step out I've got my glutes and everything on the go, but to come backward I have to use my quadriceps because my body will have to become upright, has to go into extension, and if my body's collapsing over, I won't be able to push back, especially if I had weight in my hands. So this is a really deceptively hard exercise and a great functional way to build the strength into your quads. All right, so there's several ways that you can build your quadricep strength. Again, there's not the only ways. I avoid leg extensions, I avoid leg press. They are non-functional movements that really create a lot of trouble for knee, and as the leg press also the lower back and the hip. But I always try to get to the standing movements. They'll give you the better value for money, and these things like lunges and that here are going to be a lot more valuable too in the long run. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'll see you on our next one.